from today. So this is a picture of my setup. So I've got 3 screens in front of me. So this is the one I'm presenting from and talking to you on. And this is the one that I've got the chat up so I can see what's happening. So if I'm looking over here, it's just because I'm checking in with you on the chat. And this one over here, I've got my speaker notes on. So if you see my head turning, that's why. So this is my little corner in my classroom that has become my office. My real work corner is back here, but that window has too much sunlight behind me for it to work good for presentations. And I do have 2 kids here with me today as well. I've got one hanging out on the couch still and one hiding under my desk over there. So if they interrupt, I apologize in advance. And I am Amanda Thompson. I'm a math teacher and technology integrationist at East Central Schools. And I have my Twitter and my email up there, so you can feel free to reach out to me anytime with any questions that you have. And I am looking at ditching that PDF today. So this is a quest that I was on before distance learning happened, but during distance learning, this just became even more important to me. And so as I'm going through this today, I'm going to look at reviewing the SAMR model, or maybe introducing it to you if you haven't looked at it before, and then looking at some alternatives to PDFs. And then I'll have time at the end for some questions and answers. And you can throw things, questions, comments in the chat at any time. Feel free to interrupt or come off mute and interrupt anytime as well. So my inspiration for ditching PDFs originally came from a post from Cult of Pedagogy called Frickin' Packets. And it just kind of resonated with me as both a student and a teacher. And if you have not checked out these resources, all of my links here in the presentation are live. So you can go ahead and click on Frickin' Packets. And this is Jennifer Gonzalez's just take, and it's a long one. You can listen to it on a podcast or read through it if you want. And it's after watching this YouTube video of a student upset about packets. And when she's talking about packets, she makes it clear right away that she's talking about what she calls busy sheets, and not just the worksheet or a packet, because some are super helpful. But not all worksheets or packets are created equal. So we're looking at trying to avoid some of those busy sheets and changing those into higher level learning for our students when we can. And then this is kind of along the lines of ditch that homework or ditch that textbook too. So those were my inspiration for this ditch that PDF presentation I'm giving you today. And for my framework for ditching PDFs, my examples are kind of along the lines of the SAMR model, just to give you different levels of learning for your students. So to review the SAMR model, I'm going to play this video here.
Technology has the power to transform student learning. But what happens when it doesn't?
Oh, hang on. All right, here we go.
Technology has the power to transform student learning. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when that class set of iPads is nothing more than a class set of really expensive digital worksheets? The SAMR model tackles these issues with a focus on the intersection of technology and pedagogy. This model has 4 different layers, the first 2 focusing on enhancing the learning task, while the next 2 layers focus on actual transformation. With substitution, the technology acts as a direct substitute with no significant change. So a student typing an essay on a computer is merely swapping out paper for a laptop. With augmentation, the technology acts as a substitution with some functional improvement. So that same essay is now done on a Google document with the ability to have classmates leave comments on one another's work. With modification, technology allows for significant task redesign. So that same essay is now a blog post. Students are doing research online, editing on a shared document, and publishing to an authentic audience. It is no longer an essay. It is an article crafted for the world. With redefinition, the technology allows for new tasks that were previously inconceivable. So that same essay is now a multimedia package. Students are not only researching online, but connecting with experts through video conferencing. They are co-writing their posts with a digital blogging cohort from around the world. And they are producing not only a blog post, but also a corresponding podcast and an edited video. Notice that the higher up you move through the SAMR model, the more transformative the technology task becomes, both in terms of multimedia content creation and in terms of communication with the rest of the world.
All right, so that's just a John Spencer video on the SAMR model. I really like John Spencer's videos for keeping concepts short and sweet, and I like his sketchnoting too. It's pretty fun. So I use this as my framework, and every level has its time and place. So we're not saying that you should always shoot for that high level of redefinition. You just need to be thinking about what task you're wanting students to do and where you want them to do that at, and trying to maintain some balance. And I've got some more links here too, if that's something that you're super interested in. So let's get into some alternatives to PDFs. At this first level, substitution, we're looking as just directly changing our PDF into something that's digital. So it's a direct substitute. There's no functional change. And I have two ways here that I like to do that. The first one is to put a PDF in Google Slides, and the second one is to recreate the PDF in a Google Doc. And again, all of these images here in my slides are links. So if you click on, and I will, the Google slide, it's going to show you this digital worksheet now. So this is something that is definitely useful for distance learning. If you're looking at putting some of your worksheets online into your LMS, Schoology, Google Classroom, and you want students to be able to interact with that worksheet and send it back to you. I know there's some extensions like Hammy and those kinds of things, but this one's all right in the Google slide. So it's super nice and super easy to do in both Schoology and Google Classroom. So what this is I've got my PDF. I just took a screenshot of it and put it on this slide as the background, as an image. If you're worried about students moving it around, you could put it in as the background, and then they wouldn't have the ability to move that around either. And then just to bring students' attention to where I want them to interact with this worksheet, I put in just little text boxes and did a fill color of yellow, and then I put click to type because we see that a lot on worksheets. And so then students know that this is where they should be typing in their name, and then they can fill that out and submit it online. And then once you've done enough of these, you wouldn't even need to put in the click to type. You might not even need to put in the text boxes if a lot of your worksheets look the same. So this is a nice option for when there's a lot of text or images on it, or when formatting is difficult to put into a different type of thing. So again, this is just a screenshot. If you had a multiple page packet or set of worksheets you wanted to do, you could do multiple slides for it. So back to my presentation here. So this will take you to Google Slides. And then during distance learning, I created a series of videos on YouTube to share with staff as part of my technology integration role here at East Central. And so I linked some of those in too. So we are a Schoology school. And so a lot of my videos, you'll hear me talk about Schoology, and you'll see me show staff how to put assignments into Schoology. If you're not a Schoology school, like just don't worry about that part. So here's an example.
Hi, let's look at how to put a PDF into a Google slide and add text boxes to it so the students can type their answers right on the PDF and then submit that to you via.
So I just have my face on there in the beginning, and then it goes to more of the worksheet and sharing my screen. So all of those were created in Screencastify this spring. And then the other substitution example that I have is recreating the PDF in a Google Doc. So I'm going to click on this one. And this again is that same worksheet. So I have now copied and pasted it into a Google Doc. And so I've got the text part here, and then I've got where they need to start interacting with it. And again, just to kind of make that easier for students to see what part of this Google Doc they need to fill out, I like to draw their attention to it with these yellow boxes. And this is kind of my hack for that. So in Word, you can't add a text box. So I can't just do that quite like I can in Slides. So I'll show you that. My computer's being a little slow here though. Okay, so my trick for that is to insert a one-cell table and then fill it yellow so it looks just like a text box. So I can go to Insert, Table, and then just a one-by-one one-cell table. And then I can go to my little fill bucket. And I like to use yellow because it's a bright color. You could use your school colors or something fun like that too. And then I've got my text box there then, or my text box hack, so students can see what they need to fill out. And then my practice is to just copy paste, to save myself some time on that one. So that's an example of a digital worksheet on Google Docs. And again, on my slides here, I have a video that shows my entire process from beginning to end of making that happen. So these are the two options I have for substitution. Do we have any questions or comments about these two before I move on to the next one? I'll give you a couple minutes to write in the chat if you've got anything. And Mary Jo says, great idea, text box hack. I teach 7th graders and they definitely need those like reminders. Otherwise they just look at a thing that's like so much words and they have no idea where they should get started. So at least that yellow kind of draws their attention in and they know where to get started. All right. Do you require students to show work? How do you get them to type in the math? This assignment is just a simple interest, so they just type in their answers. As far as showing work, during distance learning, we did a lot of pictures and then inserting pictures into the document. So if it was something like solving a multi-step equation, they would actually work it out on paper pencil, and then they would do a picture with their Chromebook and then put that screenshot of their picture like right into the Google Doc. And I didn't do that like, so say I like assigned 10 solving multi-step equation things. I wouldn't require a student to do that with all 10. Just because that's so tedious to take a screenshot and put it in there. But if they can do it with 1 or 2, then I can see that they understand the process. So that was kind of my workaround for math during distance learning. For this option, I've got other options that I'm going to show you here too. Do you have to make a copy for each student? If you're using an LMS like Google Classroom or Schoology, you do not have to make a copy for each student. The LMS does that for you. So I create like my master or my template, and then I can attach that to the assignment in Google Classroom or in Schoology, and that platform spits out a copy for each student. So then when I receive these, I do receive a copy for each student. So I have to, look through 60 of these files when I'm doing my grading. And it's a little tedious in the beginning as you're getting used to the workflow of doing that online. But now, you know, after 3 months of distance learning, I'm finding that that takes me just as long as it would to go through, you know, 60 stacks of paper. All right, I'm going to look at the augmentation level. If you've got questions, just keep throwing them in the chat for me. The augmentation level is now a substitute with a functional improvement. And so both of the options I chose here, the functional improvement is to provide that more immediate feedback. So that was something that we ran into issues with here at East Central right away during distance learning. It was the lag from between when something was turned in to when as a teacher, I was able to get it back to students. And so having options like these is really nice for that, because as soon as a student completes this, then they'll know, was I getting the answers correct or not? And then it made for more targeted conversations during my Zoom calls, because the kids knew already which questions that they needed help with, because they saw which ones they were getting right or not before our Zoom meeting during distance learning. So again, this is that same simple interest assignment that I had on the slides or on the Google Doc. And now I've taken those same questions and put them into a Google form and a quizzes. And I do have a link. If you're not familiar with quizzes, you can click on this link right here and it will take you directly to the quizzes that I made, and you can practice and review some simple interest, but then you can see what it's like from a student experience. And quizzes is also very similar to Quizlet, Gimkit, and Kahoot. And again, here's a video tutorial I made for creating a quizzes. And with quizzes, I'll show you, it's going to show you my teacher side of it. You put in the questions and you put in the answers, and in your settings, and I assign this like a homework assignment for distance learning so that students can pop in and out whenever they would like. It doesn't have to be a synchronous thing. And in the settings, you can have it so that they have to do more practice of the ones that they got wrong. And that kind of thing. So that's kind of nice. So if they got one wrong, they would see it again during their practice experience. So here's what it looks like from the teacher side. So I put in the first question from that worksheet and then put in the answer. And then the second question from that worksheet and then the answer. And I just copied and pasted these questions one at a time from the original, which again, that took me some prep time to make this, but then I didn't have to do any of grading for this assignment on the other side of it. So even though it was more prep time from start to finish of this assignment, it was the same as if I had done something that I had collected. So that's a quizzes. And then my other example is a Google form here, which is very similar. Or you could do a Schoology test quiz if you're a Schoology quiz like us. And again, I set this one up so that it will be automatically graded. So you can see each question is worth 1 point, and then you can type in your answers and it will tell you right away what score you got. So you can click on that and practice that if you'd like to see it from a student perspective as well. And with this, it works best for things that are short answer or because then you can do the auto grade. If you have something that you're going to grade by hand, that just takes a little bit more time and you might want to be thinking about some other options, but it's totally up to you. On this one, you can see I've got the correct answer as interest. Sometimes you might want to make more than one correct answer. So if you think, oh, my students are going to capitalize interest, I might want to add that as an answer as well. And then in your answer key on Google Forms, you can also provide feedback. So I have I represents the amount of interest earned or paid. So after a student answers that question, then they can see that on their sheet that they get at the end, showing them how they did. So if you are, like I said, if you are a Schoology school, that's the video that I made this spring. So on the bottom there, I have create a Schoology test quiz because that's what we use Charity Central. But there is a video someone else did here of how to make that Google Forms quiz. So again, these are the same worksheet, but now we've added that level of providing that more immediate feedback for students in this augmentation level here. So questions here. Give you a minute to think of them and type them in the chat. All right, I will move on. If you think of something, go ahead and throw it in there. The next level is modification, and this is where technology is allowing for a significant task redesign. And since during distance learning, I wasn't pushing out the same quantity of content that I would be if we were in the classroom every single day, I had more of my tasks at this level than I would have if we had been in the classroom, just because this level made it made the learning more apparent. So if you were one of those people like me that was like, oh, they're Snapchatting each other the answers to this assignment, how am I supposed to prevent that from happening? Having something at this level of thinking for the assignment would prevent that, because you can't, there's no like answers to Snapchat to each other. So that was how I ended up having more of my assignments here. So two of my go-tos during distance learning, my first one, Flipgrid, definitely lots of Flipgrid during distance learning. It works so well for asynchronous conversation. So I would pose a question to the students and then they could answer it and I could respond with video whenever. So that was really nice. So I have a getting started video here if you're not familiar with Flipgrid, or this takes you to an example Flipgrid that I made. And so this is that same assignment. So now I gave the students the task of creating their own simple interest question and then answering at least 2 of the classmates' questions. So now we're still interacting with the simple interest formula and practicing it, but in a different way than if it had been a worksheet. So this first video here is me just reading those instructions because I found that to be helpful for students because sometimes they'll scroll right underneath this part. So then they can see what those instructions would be, and then I'm reading them, which is nice for some students that need that accommodation as well. And then this is an example question. And Flipgrid has added some fun features as far as whiteboards and stickers and things now. So I'm actually going to play my example question here so you can see that it's not just
Hello, here is my simple interest example problem. Feel free to solve this one on your own as one of your 2 responses. So I have a friend who is going to take out $10,000 in student loans to pay for some of their college tuition this semester. And their interest rate is amazing at 4.2%. And they are going to pay this loan back over 5 years. How much interest is my friend going to pay on this student loan?
So that's the video that I made, and I'm really bad with trackpad writing. So I typed those out before I hit record on my video and then just slid them off to the side. So that's how I was able to drag them in. But I've got some students that are well, a lot of my students are better at trackpad writing than I am, so they can write out and show their work right on that whiteboard. Another thing that we did with Flipgrid too was have students write a response or a diagram or something on paper and then hold up that paper when they went to record their Flipgrid video. So that's another option for getting students to interact with your content in a way where they're practicing and not stealing answers from each other on Snapchat. And then my other example that I have here on the modification level is packaging together lesson materials with a Hyperdoc. And so there's a whole website here, and there are example Hyperdocs that you can use on this website. And it's just a way of including the whole lesson together in one place. And I really liked this for distance learning because I wasn't there to provide instruction in person. So it was just everything we needed for that lesson was on the same document for students. So these are where you can find samples of Hyperdocs that are already made. And that's really, really nice for when you're just getting started with Hyperdocs, is to check out some that other people have already done. And then also on this website, they have templates. So that's where I got the template where I created this Hyperdoc. And this one is, again, that same concept of simple interest. When I put these tutorials together in the spring, I just kept the same assignment over every task, so you can see how the same thing could look different, and they're all perfectly good assignments. It's just, what did you want to use in your classroom at that time? It's up to you, being the teacher. You know your students best. So here's my simple interest Hyperdoc, and the first little level on this particular template that I used is called Engage, and that's where you put your teaser for your students to get them thinking about the content. And so I've got a which one doesn't belong with 3 different investment scenarios for students to look at and ponder. And then the next level here is Explore. And so I've got a Khan Academy video linked in. Students can click on that to watch simple interest. I know it's better to do videos of yourself when you've got the time to do that, but sometimes I will link in Khan Academy videos when I don't have the time. And then in the next section, the explain section, I've got more of like the meat of the lesson. So here's that stuff from my original worksheet. So the same definition, a spot for the simple interest formula, and then I've got 2 example problems here built in. So this middle explain part would be kind of more like the guided notes that would happen in classroom if we were in person. And after watching that Khan Academy video, students should be able to fill out that simple interest formula and do those 2 examples. And then moving down, I've got the apply section. And for this, I just copied in that same Flipgrid that I had already shown you, just to kind of reuse that. And then for the share, I've got the responses to the Flipgrids. And then for extend, for those students that want it or need it, I've got a couple more practices on Khan Academy. So this is kind of the whole lesson in one assignment, one Hyperdoc. So I would post this for the day on Schoology, and it would just be this one document attached to the assignment on Schoology. And so then students would go through and they would fill this part out, and then they'd record their Flipgrid video. So I'd watch their Flipgrid video and then come back and look at this and give them their grade on this assignment. So rather than having like lots of layers of things shared out on Schoology, I just had this one assignment for this lesson on Schoology. So that is nice for just helping students manage organization with digital learning. So that's what I have for the modification level. Any questions on these 2 PDF alternatives before we look at redefinition? All right, seeing nothing in the chat, I'll keep going. If you think of something again, just throw it in there. So for the redefinition level, I personally think this is the hardest one to do and to do often and to do well. But this is super important for our students. So again, the redefinition level is where technology is allowing for something that was previously inconceivable to do in the classroom. So this probably isn't your like everyday kind of like go-to lessons, but it's really important for our students to see what they can do with technology today and to make sure that the technology that we're using with our students represents the technology that they would be using in the workforce as well, outside of our four walls of school. So for this level, I'm still, again, using the same simple interest assignment. And so now I've kind of turned that into more of a project-based learning. So for the first one, I've got students creating a tutorial video using Screencastify. So ideally, this tutorial video would be something that they would create together in class, in groups, so they can kind of share that workload and bounce ideas off of each other. And with Zoom, I suppose you could do breakout rooms for this kind of thing for distance learning, but I didn't try that. I wasn't brave enough. So anything like this, I would have just had people do individually. But hopefully I will be brave enough to venture out there and do groups with Zoom breakout rooms. So for this assignment, I just have the students creating their own tutorial video, and I kept the task directions super short and simple. Research simple interest, create a video demonstrating your understanding of simple interest, must include the simple interest formula, 2 worked out examples of simple interest, and real life examples of simple interest, just so I can see that they've got a good understanding of the whole concept. And then here's a rubric for that. So we've got concept, design, participation, final product, and just what levels those would be at, and then tips there. So have each person in the group select their roles. If we're doing that in a group, write out a script for that and then record that video. So I would have students record that with Screencastify, because Screencastify is an extension on Chromebooks that's free for students to add, as long as they have less than, I think it's a 5-minute video there. And so that's one way of using technology in the classroom for that simple interest assignment. Another one that I looked at, and I have never tried something like this in the classroom, but I thought it was super fun, was using coding in the classroom. So I've been taking some coding classes this summer, and I'm really excited about that. And so this example is coding a program to do simple interest. So this one that I've linked in here is actually a simple interest program that's already complete. So I wouldn't share this with the students. This is just what it could look like if you had students that were really into computer science or coding. So if I click run here, their program has this little calculate simple interest button. And then you can see my pop-up on my screen says enter that principal amount. So I could enter in a principal of $10,000. And now it's going to ask me for that rate amount. So 4.2, and then over 5 years. And then it's going to tell me the simple interest, because they've programmed that in the HTML here for that. So that's a really cool project. And there are tons of pre-made projects on code.org. I know this one is from somewhere else because that's what I was able to find for this without creating something on my own. But code.org has tons of projects for all grade levels, kindergarten through 12th grade, and even adults. That's where I'm taking my coding class through the summer, is for from code.org. And this video is just on why every class should have some sort of coding component in it. So highly recommend checking that out. And, oh, that was weird. All right, that is all I had for you today. So I wanted to make sure that we had at least 10 minutes here before we ended at 1:45 to have questions. Or if you have some ideas that you've tried and used for distance learning and ditching those PDFs to share with each other. So I just threw some next step suggestions in here because, you know, it's August, we're all on summer break. And I'm not expecting you to like tomorrow start ditching those PDFs and creating all these lessons. And there was a lot in here. So definitely don't go ahead and try like all 8 of these ideas at once. Just pick one. So what is the one idea you saw today where you were like, oh, I haven't tried that. Maybe I want to check that out this school year, and then make a commitment. So share that with a colleague, like, hey, this was a really good idea I heard, like, let's give that a try. Or if you're fully in like the whole school and life is overwhelming kind of scenario, which I have been at times here, maybe just write down one thing to look at over MEA break in October when maybe life and school has settled down a little. So those are some ideas for next steps as you are thinking about going back to school. So questions. Looks like, Gina, have you done the tiered Google Forms? When you say tiered, do you mean like choose your own adventure, where if you answer one thing, it's going to send you elsewhere? If so, I have only done a couple of those because it's really messy. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you answer, so there's some really cool tiered Google Forms that you can do. So it'll be like, if you answer one thing, it'll send you to a different section. And those you can really create some awesome feedback opportunities for your students. So you could have like one question and 4 multiple choice answers, and you could have some like of the common errors you would see in your multiple choice option. So then if you answer A and that's the common error for that one is like a divide by 0 error, then the next page could have feedback on it, like, oh, you just committed a divide by 0 error. Why don't you try this? I haven't done a lot because, yeah, like Gina says, they're time intensive to make. But those are super awesome for feedback. So I've done a few and I've never regretted it. The time spent, because they are really awesome. But I would say start small if you're interested in looking at tiered Google Forms. Like maybe use it as an exit slip or like an end of a lesson kind of thing, and just have like 1 or 2 questions and get started with it that way, because they are super time intensive to make. And I would recommend too that you almost like write it down on paper before you go to your Google form, and just kind of have like a little map laid out, like I want this one to go here, because Google Forms, you just scroll down that screen and I sometimes get lost. I wish it was like Google Slides where you could look at like the whole thing side by side and move them around. But maybe someday they'll have that feature. So I would sketch it out if you were going to do one of those too. Other questions, comments, feel free to throw them in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and share with us. Anyone try anything fun and exciting for not for ditching that PDF that they want to share? No. Totally okay. I'm gonna pop back to the beginning here. So this is my contact information. So if you're trying any of these and you're like, oh, I know I heard something about that from that one lady, you can reach out. So I'm Amanda Thompson at East Central, athompson@eastcentral.k12.mn.us. And I did put all of these in the Google Slides. And I'm just gonna leave these slides up for like ever. So I know ACMEC is eventually gonna have video of this, and then that'll be available for a short time. And so these slides I will leave up forever. So if you ever want to come back here and look at those tutorial videos or look at those links, you can come back to those slides. So again, that's at bit.ly/ditch PDF. All right, that was a lot of talking. I'll pause again. If anyone has questions or something to share, feel free. All right, not seeing a whole lot, seeing some thank yous. Thank you for that. I hope you got something out of today. Again, like just one idea, that's all. I'll stick around here for a couple more minutes. If you've got something, go ahead and throw it in the chat or share. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of like ACMEC. We've got one more session left, so hopefully you're getting a lot out of today.